I was completely unaware of the situation unfolding at that time. Many moments were spent questioning my husband, an experience that dates back nearly a decade during my 30s. Just after recently tying the knot, my spouse's relentless work routine, which began even before our marriage, made me anticipate a challenging life together. He was absent for such extended periods that loneliness consumed me initially. I tried to give him space during his rare moments at home to unwind, yet my frustration mounted. My demeanor grew increasingly harsh each time I encountered him. Despite his attempts to comfort me, if he sensed my dissatisfaction persisting, he'd eventually start ignoring me. I yearned for his attention regardless of his demanding job, simply because we were married. However, this emotion overwhelmed me, obstructing my ability to see him objectively. Arguments between us became the norm, with him consistently reassuring me that he would eventually settle down and we'd embark on trips to the island. Regrettably, those promises remained unfulfilled. I questioned whether work held more significance than me, asking if he should refrain from coming home if it drained him. I too felt exhausted, and witnessing his excitement only added to my sadness. Despite my hurtful words, he never took them seriously, and an unsettling feeling gradually settled in, signaling the potential end of our marriage. Over time, it became evident that I wasn't solely angry at him. My feelings for him were waning. Initially, I hadn't suspected anything, as his job necessitated numerous business trips. However, stumbling upon a hotel receipt and membership card in his suit pocket shattered my illusions. The receipt indicated he had stayed at a hotel on a business trip, accruing points for multiple nights. As a prosperous businessman, he was popular among his female colleagues, leading me to conclude that he had found solace in another woman's company. Regardless of his infidelity, I decided to go out and make plans, even on weekends. While enjoying initially, the facade grew tiresome, and my inability to authentically enjoy myself weighed heavily. Perhaps it was time for both of us to find our freedom to cease evading each other and avoiding the reality of our deteriorating marriage. Maybe he'd be happier with someone else, so I resolved to move on to the next phase of my life, despite this being the same man I once loved, until I discovered I couldn't envision a lifelong partnership with him. Summoning courage, I initiated the divorce process, pondering if any alternatives existed. However, indications of his involvement with a new girlfriend persisted following days of contemplation. I mustered the courage to send him a text. "Can we talk? I need you to come home early today." His swift response suggested he too had something to discuss, despite my certainty about divorce. His apparent willingness to converse triggered a sense of uncertainty. His heart had drifted away from me towards someone else, to end things on a positive note. I decided to smile through this ordeal. I awaited his return, and when he did arrive, I noticed a considerable weight loss. His eyes and tone were familiar, yet an insurmountable gap had emerged between us despite his typically quiet nature. He listened as I expressed my thoughts, though anger at his indifference began to surface. I confronted him about his new girlfriend, and he looked surprised, prompting a brief smile from both of us. In that moment, we laughed together for the first time in ages, regardless of the topic at hand. After that encounter, we managed to communicate once more, evoking a peculiar sense of reconnection, perhaps stemmed from him realizing that I was aware of his affair. There was a newfound vitality in my husband's expression. "Let's cease these attacks. I don't want to leave because I dislike you." He admitted agreeing with my proposition. We decided to tidy up our living space and divide our belongings, preparing for the possibility of departure. Each item held cherished memories, yet some I desired to keep concealed for a while longer. Uncharacteristically, my husband, who tended to hold on to possessions for years, didn't hesitate to discard them. His gesture of grace overwhelmed me. "Take whatever you want. It's my fault, and this is my way of making amends." He earnestly said that as we completed the task, our room became orderly and only our shared belongings remained. His eyes seemed to be tinged with tears as he acknowledged his remorse. I wondered if he felt the sadness as he cleaned up a sentiment I understood as I felt it too. The path ahead was uncertain, but we agreed to take it step by step, deciding to rest for the remainder of the day. I took a soothing bath to clear my thoughts. Although I could theoretically seek compensation from my unfaithful husband, our relationship's demise was undeniable. Furthermore, I no longer wished to further distort my memories of him. As I prepared for bed, he entered the bedroom and gently embraced me with a mixture of awkwardness and remorse. "I'm used to mentioning his new girlfriend." His response was subdued. "Just one more time, I want to be by your side." He confessed his vulnerability, which caused me to tense up slightly, sensing his trembling embrace and asking if he was crying. I received no answer as my hand brushed his back. I noticed his body had become leaner and lighter. Concerned, I asked if he was okay. He finally spoke, admitting that he had been intentionally losing weight. "Is there anything else I should know? Are you truly all right?" I inquired, taken aback by the difference in his physique. His physique, once robust and muscular, had changed. He explained that she preferred him. This way, sadness enveloped me once more. He's doing it for her. Why not just forget about me if he's so content with her that he's willing to transform himself? I questioned myself internally, suppressing my emotions. I added a sarcastic remark. "That wasn't necessary. You're still the same. I appreciate that part of you. Starting tomorrow, I wish you a happy life. I'll be praying for you, wherever you are." I uttered with a touch of irony as my husband began to snore. His atypical and steady pace of movement persisted even in his sleep. While his future might unfold in that way, I drifted off to sleep, uttering a hopeful wish. Oversleeping the next day due to my late-night room cleaning, I discovered my husband absent from the bed in the living room. In the living room, an A4-sized envelope lay on the table. Its contents included a bank book, a stack of documents related to marital assets, and an unusually substantial sum of money in my name among them. I uncovered divorce papers with my husband's section already filled out. Panic took over as I tried his cell phone, but it had been disconnected. Desperately, I contacted his parents and friends, yet none could provide information, finally reaching out to his workplace. I learned that he had resigned a few months prior, a drastic change for the workaholic he once was. It should have made sense if my husband had found a new girlfriend and left, but why go to such lengths? Why did no one inform me? Suspicion began to color my interactions, and reaching my husband seemed impossible. The mounting mental fatigue present even before the divorce was almost overwhelming. Despite arranging compensation for me now that I was free, I chose to immerse myself in a place I truly cherished. Our journey led us to a remote island, a nearly day-long trip from the mainland. With a population of around 3,000, it held a deserted allure. I had visited this island once before with my husband. Enticed by its natural beauty and unhurried rhythm, he had promised we would return once his work allowed. Despite missing him, I sensed that what I needed now was the tranquility of this place. I took the leap, quitting my job and relocating to the secluded haven. A few months later, renting out my house to someone else was a risky move, but the prospect of staying there was unbearable. Although my husband's mortgage payment method remained unclear, his diligent work to clear it was evident. Nevertheless, the house was laden with memories, and the loneliness within it felt unbearable. Despite this, I was reluctant to squander my husband's efforts. Countless mysteries surrounded his actions, yet I no longer had the luxury of asking him about them. My plan was to find solace on this serene island, releasing myself from the past. Over time, I began adjusting to the island's way of life and forging connections with neighbors. My financial stability rendered work unnecessary, but the inactivity proved more disheartening, so I began assisting elderly neighbors in resolving their predicaments. Initially an outsider, I gradually integrated into the island community. As I embraced my role and settled in, I learned that a new patient had arrived from the mainland for medical treatment. This individual, gravely ill, had chosen this island as a final refuge due to the absence of medical facilities. The choice was daunting for anyone unprepared for life. On this isolated isle, while apprehensive, I was designated to assist the new client. When the request came, I apprehensively made my way to his house. Perched on a hill with an ocean view, the small dwelling, though habitable, seemed scarcely equipped to combat the elements' doubts about its suitability. As a final dwelling crept in as I approached upon ringing the doorbell, a faint voice invited me in. Stepping inside, I found my client seated near a window. The sunlight and breath streaming into his face remained obscured by the backlight, causing me to squint as he turned toward me. Speech evaded me. In front of me sat my husband, or rather, my ex-husband. Our mutual astonishment was palpable as we stood there, locking eyes and breaking the silence. My husband acknowledged the truth he found out. He declared a mischievous smile, gracing his lips, reminiscent of the past. I struggled to comprehend his presence, a reality that contradicted what I knew. He beckoned for me to sit beside him, grabbing my hand as I complied. As I took my seat, his grip remained reassuring, gradually calming me to speechlessness. In the face of this surreal encounter, I couldn't formulate coherent words. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken emotions. I wiped away my tears and answered. An elderly man stood there, surprised by my tear-streaked face. He entered, took a seat next to my husband, and greeted him in a soft, gentle voice. My husband assured him that everything was normal, initiating a conversation between them. This elderly man was likely the island's sole doctor. His presence confirmed the island's lack of proper medical facilities and highlighted the clinic's significance. My husband had chosen this island for his final days, an autonomous decision that I now find myself keenly listening to, intrigued by their discussion. I pondered if there was a way for me to contribute and assist in some meaningful manner. My husband's physician departed after approximately 10 minutes of casual dialogue. I found myself compelled to chase after him. Evidently, my disheveled appearance startled him once more. However, upon disclosing our relationship, he appeared to comprehend. I inquired about my husband's condition and prospective treatment, only to be met with the response that he couldn't divulge such information without my husband's consent. Perhaps out of sympathy, he informed me that my husband would soon lose the ability to walk unaided. The thought of him spending his final days in solitude was distressing, prompting the plea for me to be there for him. I was left in astonishment. The whereabouts of my husband's girlfriend crossed my mind. Returning to the house with a heavy heart, I found my husband waiting. He seemed to anticipate my conversation with the doctor and greeted me with a smile. My return to him led to a request to spend the night in my husband's apartment, which held only a scant amount of luggage and a couple of futons. This marked the first time we shared a bed since the discussion of divorce under the covers, and we exchanged stories of our journeys. To this point, while I yearned to inquire about his ailment, I opt to refrain from broaching painful subjects and instead engage in reminiscence. My emotions surrounding his prior relationship influenced my choices. I inquired whether he had brought his former partner to the island prior to my request to stay. His laughter and avoidance hinted at a somber occurrence, cautious not to wound his feelings. I ceased my questioning the following day. I informed my employer and decided to take time off to be with my husband during the remaining period he had left in a wheelchair. I accompanied my husband, whose mobility was severely restricted, around the island. Familiar places from my previous visit and new scenic spots became the backdrop for our shared time. Despite the fleeting nature of these moments, being together proved fulfilling. Regrets about undisclosed feelings during our marriage surfaced even after divorce. My emotions for him grew stronger. Regrettably, circumstances were now unchangeable. Remaining by his side as a friend became my commitment. Joyful moments were fleeting while the illness gradually took its toll. His physical capabilities diminished, preventing outings and resulting in more frequent episodes of sleep. Daily visits from the doctor provided a degree of relief, yet the impending loss felt inconceivable. I devoted myself to caring for him, ensuring he was never alone. Awakening a possibility at any time, sometimes he would recount recently awakened dreams, other times he shared memories as if they just transpired. Every moment was cherished, amplifying my sorrow. Consequently, my husband's periods of wakefulness diminished during our silences. I remained by his side, narrating his favorite literature and relaying descriptions of the world around him so he could understand. Desiring to convey the beauty of a sunset, I grasped his hand and attempted to communicate the chill of his hand. Irregular breathing and unsettling chest movements prompted panic. I urgently summoned the doctor, hoping for reassurance, but was met with the reality that his condition had deteriorated significantly. The doctor advised letting him pass away peacefully. He wants you to stay with him, so I'll step back. No need to worry. I'll be close by in case anything arises. Therefore, please remain by his side with those parting words. The doctor bid farewell to my husband and left, and so the moment had arrived. I had anticipated its arrival, yet it was still almost unbearable. Meeting you was a source of delight amidst the challenges. In truth, I hold deep affection for you. As I held my husband's hand, I whispered into his ear, and miraculously, he gently squeezed my hand in response. Though medically improbable, I distinctly felt it. Shortly thereafter, he drew his last breath and passed away peacefully. The tears flowed freely, yet I found solace, and having been there for him until the end, the days following his passing were a whirlwind, leaving little time for grieving until after the burial. Upon returning home and organizing my husband's belongings, I noticed stacks of letters resembling a mountain leafing through them. I was struck by the nostalgia evoked by his handwriting. Among them were dozens of letters penned by my husband. These letters began on the day we reunited. My husband had moved here in the hope of finding me once more, though he likely never anticipated his success. His initial letters expressed his surprise and joy at our meeting. The humor and warmth in his letters brought a smile to my face, and his sentiments were the best compliment he could have given me.